I recently put a poll out on my YouTube channel asking a pretty simple question. Have you ever completed a Tombs of Amascut raid? The answers shocked me. Nearly half of you said no. And you had me thinking, why not? It's way more achievable than you probably realize, and you can absolutely print money here when you know what you're doing. If you're one of those people that voted no, I'm willing to bet that your exposure to raids is likely some absolutely cracked gamer sending max efficiency PVM on Twitch, or maybe you've tried to learn before and been faced with a bunch of elitist sweat lords gatekeeping some of the funnest content in the game. It wouldn't surprise me, because that's exactly what I went through. It's easy to just chin it off completely and decide that raiding isn't for you. But here's the thing. A lot of players who think they're not ready for raids are already doing content that's teaching them the exact same skills. If you've fought Scurrius, you've practiced prayer switching. If you've killed Perilous Moons, you've practiced movement. If you've done Royal Titans, you've practiced gear switching. And every single one of those things is something you need to use in ToA. If you've spent any amount of time doing mid-game PVM, you're probably a lot closer to raiding than you think. And that's especially true today. Gear is cheaper and easier to get than it's ever been, there are plugins that make learning easier, and unlike other raids in Old School RuneScape, Tombs of Amascut lets you choose exactly how hard you want it to be. You can walk in as a beginner with no real prior knowledge and start learning. So in this video, I'm going to show you why Tombs of Amascut is the perfect first raid, the skills you already have that transfer directly to it, a few plugins that will make learning way less painful, and we'll show you that you don't need mental gear to start sending this content. This video isn't a step-by-step guide. It's my attempt to prove to you that you are ready to raid. But once you've watched this video and done all the prep work you need, I've got a full beginner-friendly Tombs of Amascut guide that will walk you through your first completion step by step. Tombs of Amascut is literally designed to be your first raid. It's the only raid that's made to be completely soloable. I'm not saying Tob and Cox aren't doable, but they require top tier skills and a load of weird nerdy stuff. Doing a solo ToA doesn't require anything game breaking, just a little bit of consistent practice and half decent gear. Now, I can hear you guys now. Practicing is scary. If I die, I'm gonna waste all my money on death fees and supplies. Absolutely not. Death in ToA is completely free unless you turn on any of the death limiting invocations. And at ToA, if you die, you're given free supplies to use, as well as a convenient resupply after the second and fourth boss. This means you can go in, die a bunch of times at each boss, and have a shitload of stackable supplies to use without even having to waste a dose of your own Sarah Brew. One of the things that makes this so powerful is that you can pick and choose which order to do the first 4 bosses in, meaning you don't have to get through a load of dead time practicing bosses you already know how to do when you decide you want to learn something new. Learning a raid on your own does take a lot of the fear out of it, but to be honest, you shouldn't be scared or embarrassed of dying in a raid. It's part of the journey, and if anyone's a dick about it, that says more about them than you. If you want a community without that kind of toxicity, check out my Discord server and clan. When you do decide that you're ready to start running the content as a group, the raid scales all the way up to 8 players. So if you've just got your one good buddy or the full squad, you can smash this content without having to plan your life around it. You can just roll up with whoever you can find. Regardless of how many of you are sliding into the raid, entry mode is the gateway into this content for a first timer. I'm not going to tell you it's easy, because there is a lot to learn. But honestly, it's more forgiving than plenty of mid-game PVM like Vorkarth, Muspa or Zulrah. With a little bit of patience and persistence, you should be able to get through an entry mode raid. Unlike other raids, when you're ready to up the difficulty level, it's not just one massive jump. In ToB, the difference between entry, normal and hard mode is insane. In ToA, it's a pretty big step up too, but you don't have to take that step all at once. You can add in lots of little mini steps by just turning on one invocation at a time, learning a new mechanic or modifier, and gradually upping the intensity until you cross those thresholds. Whilst you do need to cross that normal mode threshold to get certain loot, every single invocation point you add ups your chances for a purple chest, a unique weapon or armor piece, so you really are rewarded for pushing yourself to that next level. This creates a slippery slope that makes you want to get better, instead of just farming the same old shit you've been doing for years. So, if you're thinking about giving ToA a shot, let's talk about the skills you already have. Let's cover all of the bosses in no particular order. Like we said earlier, you can practice them in any order you like. Let's be real quickly, not everything you need to know is going to be something you've practiced perfectly before at another boss. But there is so much crossover with mechanics, and unlike other raids, ToA communicates what you need to do pretty well visually. In the older raids, you kinda just have to know the meta to take part. At ToA, if you show up, use the right prayers, and avoid the shit on the floor, you've mastered most of the content. Zebak is basically the culmination of those two crucial mechanics, prayer switching and avoiding the shit on the floor. The floor will be covered in acid. It's so obvious that you're not supposed to stand on it. That's what I love about ToA, it's intuitive. The prayer switching mechanic is essentially exactly the same as Scurrius' magic and ranged attacks. It does get a little faster as the fight goes on, but with the practice you get, I'm confident that you'll be able to handle this. Dodging the waves isn't something you tackle in early game bosses, but it does pop up in a quest boss, so if you've been a good boy and gotten your quest done, you'll have dealt with these before at the Judge of Yama. The raw attack where you push the jugs to clear the venom is the unique thing here. I can't think of another spot in the game that this shows up at, but here's the reason I think it's super beginner friendly, even though it's lethal if you mess it up. It requires a bit of thinking and puzzle solving, but it doesn't require a million clicks per minute to get through successfully. You just have to work out what jug you need to push and stand behind a rock. It can be tough to solve, but with practice, you'll get to grips with it fast. You don't need years of building up that muscle memory to succeed. Barbar has a few mechanics that you'll likely be familiar with. As you're praying melee the whole time, everything here is movement based. The most punishing attack is the simplest thing to master. You have to stand next to the big rocks when he throws something at you. I know I said other PVM would train you for this raid, but this was one of those ones that's so simple you shouldn't even need anything to practice. The Shadow Slam is pretty simple. This kind of thing is used everywhere. It's RuneScape's first golden rule that we talk about all the time. Don't stand in the shit on the floor. It really is that easy. Killing the additional monkey spawns is actually less difficult than something similar you've probably done previously. If you've done Royal Titans, you've had to deal with multiple spawns and gear switches all at the same time. Here, all you need to do is click a monkey. Easy. Dealing with the boulders is actually kind of unique, and probably the one thing that's going to catch out most learners. This is one of those moments where you're just going to need to grit your teeth and practice until you get it. You're going to mess it up, then you're going to mess it up a little bit less, then eventually you'll be flying through and getting back on the boss before the phase even finishes. Kephri's a bit of a weird one. The dung special attack means the room requires a little bit of forward planning, meaning it's not the most beginner friendly, but once you understand some simple rules, the rest of it's pretty chill. The dung piles will fall down in straight lines at regular intervals, but you can cheese this mechanic by stacking diagonally every time. There are tricks you can learn to make the dung work in your favor as you up the invocation level, but don't worry about that early, you've just got to get through the room. The fireball mechanic and the exploding bugs are just like Hueycoatl, so again, if you've been doing your quests, you should be chilling here. Personally, I'd say these are even easier than Hueycoatl's fireball, because it's on a loop. You can really get into the rhythm instead of being caught off guard. The Scarab Overlord spawns are simple. You should be more than familiar with a combat triangle at this point in your journey. Mage beats melee, range beats mage, melee beats range. This whole room gets a lot simpler when you realize that half the mechanics just simply are not dangerous. The exploding eggs look like a pain in the ass, but they deal such little damage that you can just let them explode and pray ranged against the bugs that spawn. And the swarms are a nightmare to deal with, but they don't damage you, they just heal the boss. So ignoring them when you're learning is totally fine. That's what's so great about ToA. Beginners can just get through the rooms without sweating too much about every little detail. Akkha is probably the hardest of the 4 initial bosses to get to grips with. For his prayer and style switches, you simply need to gear switch, something you've had a lot of practice at the Royal Titans. But you also need to switch your prayer to mirror his. Switching your prayers is just that one extra click. The raid is slowly amping up the difficulty from stuff you've done before, but none of it is unachievable. The shadows are a fairly unique mechanic, but they're super easy. Kill a shadow, then keep Akkha in the same quadrant as the dead shadow. It's weird when you don't know what you're doing, but you'll deal with this mechanic without even thinking about it after 5 minutes. The Simon Says mechanic is one of my favourites. Memorising the pattern and moving between safe quadrants doesn't seem too hard, but when you're locked in on the fight, it's easy to forget the order of the colours. It's no different really to moving between the safe sections at Moons of Peril, except you're moving a lot faster and the pattern is a bit more complicated than just going around in a circle. I mean, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but my point is, stop thinking about PVM as learning something totally fresh every time that you want to tackle something new. It's always similar or identical mechanics in a different format. The white and black orb attacks have some pretty confusing mechanics, but for beginners, they're all completely nullified by one simple trick. Stand on top of each other for the whole fight and don't move. You don't need to practice or master anything, sometimes it's just about knowing the fight and communicating with your team. The final phase is chaos, but I love it because once again, it is so clear what you need to do. Don't get hit by the fat loads of white goop flying across your screen. Once again, the movement skills you've picked up from Moons should help here. Does running across a room whilst avoiding obstacles that move in a straight line remind you of anything? The Blue Moon's tornado attack is pretty close. Other than just not even trying in the first place, Wardens is the most common filter for people trying to learn ToA. There's a lot to learn. It's easy to get overwhelmed, and it can be hard to recover if you mess up. But nothing here is immediately lethal. Something that's really helped me out is remembering that you don't always need to be perfect. One mistake isn't always the end of a run. Being able to keep calm and recover is a skill in itself, and it's something that's gotten me through more kills at Warden than I'd like to admit. Phase 1 is the most unintuitive part of the whole raid. There's just stuff you need to know beforehand or you're gonna get your cheeks clapped. Tanking the orbs is easy, just stand in the shit on the left hand side as you start the fight. I know that's counterintuitive to the golden rule, but fuck it, that's RuneScape's fault, not mine. If you tank this properly, you'll have to deal with the UFOs. We're back on with the golden rule pretty quickly, don't stand in the shit on the floor. Groundbreaking stuff here, lads. Another thing that you just have to know, for the projectiles in the first phase, stand away from your teammates for the first one, then close to your teammates for the second one. These two mechanics are kind of why I would always advise to watch a quick guide for tackling content if you don't want to just waste your time. I've got no idea how you're supposed to get this one without just being told. If anyone that's actually good at the game has any idea, let me know in the comments. Phase 2 is a great combination of prayer switching, gear switching, and movement, the three pillars of combat in this game. You'll have to switch prayers, just like Scurrius. She'll disable your prayers, just like Amoxliatl, and you'll be switching gear regularly, just like at Titans. You'll even be moving back and forth between safe zones, just like Moons, although it's a little less obvious where you should be moving. The point is, everything in this phase is something you've done before. You're just doing it all at once. This is honestly where I expect most people to die regularly when learning. Once you fall out of the loop, it's easy to get out of the cycle and start panicking. But like I said earlier, getting good at recovering is something you need to learn too. Phase 3 is probably the most obvious example of old school RuneScape being a rhythm game in disguise. If you've ever played a musical instrument, danced, played a sport, you'll know that no amount of reading, watching, or thinking can prepare you for something that requires good timing and accurate execution. 90% of this phase is just thinking right, left, middle, and clicking on 3 different squares at the right time. When you say it like that, it sounds easy, but it can get spicy when you introduce the other mechanics. You'll have to deal with the prayer switching from Zebak earlier. You should be more than familiar with it by now, but keeping on top of it whilst constantly moving is certainly something new. You'll also have to deal with Barbar throwing boulders at you, but if you're doing the movement correctly, you'll avoid this by default. The final part of P3 is the skulls. Do you remember one tick in the rats at Scurrius with the rat bone mace? This is exactly the same. Honestly, it's even easier as the targets don't move. P4 looks scary, but it's another part of the room made simple with a little mantra. Click, move, click, move. The lightning strikes are like the falling rocks at Scurrius. You've got the prayer switches from Zebak, also like Scurrius. Barbar's falling rocks are kinda like Vorkar. The pressure of the floor disappearing behind you is just an illusion. You can stick to the front 2 or 3 rows and get this done just fine. You don't need all that space, although I still suck when it gets down to the last row to be fair, but it is possible. I just need practice too. This is all stuff you've probably done before, it's just all happening at the same time. It'll take time for your brain to piece it together, but you are capable. Mechanics are the most important thing in my opinion, but there are two other factors we can't overlook: gear and plugins. We mentioned the Sweat Lord sending max efficiency ToAs in gear worth more than the entire GDP of Venezuela earlier. You're not that guy. I'm not that guy, but we don't need to be. You can send this raid in literal rags. You can make enough GP to tackle this content in a week straight off Tutorial Island. It's an absolute joke how little you need to send this content. I'm not bullshitting. Here's another plug for the full guide. If you don't believe me, I'm not going through the full setup here, but let's go through some of the highlights. Mixed Hide is absolutely dirt cheap. It's extremely good stab-based melee gear and works great as a ranged gear too. This helps you minimize the amount of gear switches you need, and you can bring in more food and potions, a lifesaver when you're learning. The Arcan Blade is free from quest rewards, and it's really good here. If you hate quests, the Bell's Folly is a sick option too for a very affordable price. And once you've done a few raids, you can get the Black Gem to upgrade the Keris Partisan. The Keris Partisan of Amascut is second only to Osmanton's Fang in ToA. Crazy that something you get for free can be so effective. The Rune Crossbow for the price is absolutely cracked here, especially when paired with Ruby Enchanted Bolts. The special effect of these bolts absolutely melts bosses when it pops off. Mystic Robes and a Trident of the Seas will do for Mage. Again, they're dirt cheap. You barely use Mage when you're learning this raid, so as long as you can squeeze out a bit of damage, you'll be fine in this budget gear. With all of this stuff being so ridiculously cheap and genuinely viable, the only excuse you have for not giving this content a go is your own self-doubt. You can send this raid if you want to. Let's just give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Natura Pine. They make awesome flavoured toothpicks that are great if you're trying to kick any kind of habit that involves your mouth. Wink wink. I'm trying to stop snacking so much right now, and just having something I can put in my mouth to keep me busy is a lifesaver. The new golden vanilla flavour might be my new favourite. Use code BOOT for a 10% discount. Check the pinned comment for some links. If you're using RuneLite, there are loads of tools that make the learning experience so much smoother. I know a lot of people see using plugins as cheating, or maybe they just don't like the way it makes their client look. Honestly, I get that. I hate watching a stream with 10,000 different weird tile overlays, timers, and whatever the fuck else is going on. But you can make this raid so much easier for yourself without having anything massively intrusive ruining your game experience. Tile indicators is basically essential in any PVM until you get an extremely solid grasp on movement and the tick system. It shows you where your true tile is. This helps you deal with movement mechanics. If you want to know a bit more about movement mechanics and the whole concept of a true tile, check out my other video. It's a little bit much to explain here. There is a lot of gear switching in Tombs of Amascut, so I'd recommend using the Inventory Tags plugin. You can use this plugin to shift-click gear in your inventory to give it a color-coded outline. The Tombs of Amascut plugin doesn't really help too much in any of the boss rooms, but it's an absolute lifesaver for the puzzle rooms. Solving these puzzles isn't too bad on your first KC, but by the time you get to 50, you'll want every advantage you can get to speed through these rooms. We've glossed over the puzzle rooms a bit here, but remember this isn't a guide, and honestly the only one with any real risk is the monkey room. Everything else is mega chill. The Party Hub plugin is super helpful when you're in a group. If someone's trying to show you something, the ability to ping tiles and view your buddy's gear and inventory setup is invaluable. All of these little advantages really stack up. When you're learning to ride a bike, it's okay to use the training wheels. It doesn't mean you're cheating. Why not take every advantage you can get when you're trying to learn something new? Look, I'm still learning this too. Right now, I'm working towards the Fang kit, which means eventually clearing a 500 invocation raid with no deaths in the team. And trust me, I wasn't born knowing how to do this stuff. If you want to come watch my progress, I'm streaming it live on Twitch. I'm regularly learning new invocations live on stream and grouping up with the chat and Discord community for some awesome chaotic 8-man raids live, so come get involved. Also, if you've made it this far, I think you've liked the video, so if you want to hit that like button, it really helps me out, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I appreciate it. Cheers. If you're still having doubts on if you're ready for this content, ask yourself a few questions. Have I killed Scurrius, Moons of Peril, Raw Titans, Amoxliatl, and Hueycoatl? Do I have at least Mixed Hide, Mystic Robes, a Rune Crossbow, a Trident, and a half-decent stab weapon? Am I willing to die a few times for the sake of learning and progress? Remembering, of course, that there are no consequences for death here. If the answer to all of those questions is yes, then you're ready for TOA. And if the answer to the third question is no, the only thing standing in your way is your mindset. I've got a video that might help adjust that too. Remember that poll from the start of the video? Nearly half of you said you'd never completed Tombs of Amascut. Hopefully by now, you've realised that the thing holding most people back isn't their stats, gear, or account progression. It's them convincing themselves they're not ready. You don't need that extra gear upgrade. Stop waiting until you magically become a better player, because it's not going to happen. Send an entry mode, die a few times, learn something, get that first KC. You can do it. You're probably a lot closer than you think. As always, a massive shout out to my YouTube channel members and Twitch subscribers. You guys are the reason I can continue to make these videos. I appreciate the continued support. Checking me out and dropping me a sub on stream is the best way to support me right now. If you've got Amazon Prime, you can hit me up with a Prime sub for completely free. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you next time.